I had the option to leave the meeting just then. What if I would have just been
Dude, I would have murdered
recording?
you.
Hell no.
I would walk to Naperville and murder you.
Beat me with your laptop.
So, John, I think I need to welcome you officially to the Speech Guys.
Thank you.
Um, you haven't introduced an episode yet, have you?
I have not. No.
Oh, dang, dude. I'm kind of surprised it's I'm
I'm
surprised
honored and terrified and offended that it hasn't been
that you
speaker.
haven't been invited yet. This was a previously recorded podcast that we already did. So kind of the crux of the speech is so Adrian kind of breaks down all of these fears and thing, or kind of helps peel back these layers of Rocky's persona and really like drives him to new heights. Maybe one quick question just to kind of wrap this up. Is there a way that Elizabeth is kind of like, is there a scenario where she kind of pushed you pride a little bit and like uncovered something like, invigorating in
Hmm.
you?
Hmm. Oh yeah, it's more or less constantly. Um,
It doesn't need to be too personal. I understand you can get pretty personal and then whatever, but I
no,
just think
yeah.
that that's something that I think we'll be discussing in the podcast. Is just kind of how that dynamic. I feel like women are a lot more attuned with that stuff, and they kind of, I don't know, they bring that out in you differently.
I think maybe the first example that comes into mind, and I guess we weren't even married yet, so I don't know if this. I mean,
No, it
like
still counts.
we were, yeah. So we were. I think we were engaged at this point, but I was working at I was working at a church. So this was post seminary. I got a job where I was working at a church, and I knew that we were going to get married, but I was also like unsure because I knew a church job wouldn't translate well into like another field because it's like I was the director of liturgy, and it's like how can you go from liturgy to like an
Coca-Cola
office
called it.
job? Yeah, I was
They
like,
just
does
fucking
anyone have a chalice that needs cleaning? Because I'm your man. And I mean, there is like some skills that you need, but not really. And I remember right around that point, one of the guys who was at the church, their website guy left and he took a job doing something else. I think he went to Net Ministries or something, and like a internal role at Net Ministries. And so I took on the kind of the website stuff there and like learned specific skills and stuff to be able to get like a job outside of that because I knew like I needed to be able to provide for a family and I wasn't going to be able to do that on a church salary.
Sure.
And Elizabeth was like very influential in like giving me the confidence to go out and like get a new job and to like trust in the skills that I had to be able to get something and like parlay that into like kind of a more traditional career. So there were many times where I was, going through the job interview process and just like really second guessing myself. And she
Sure.
like totally was Adrian just being like you got to go into the interview like with confidence, like you have a lot of skills, like you're smart, like, and then there's me mumbling, "Oh, I don't know.
I don't know if I have the heart, Adrian. I
I
mean,
don't know if the
Elizabeth.
heart." Yeah. Elizabeth. Um, so yeah, that's the one I can think of off the top of
Sure.
my head. But
No, that's legit.
she's constantly she's constantly doing stuff like that for
Yeah.
me, as your wife does for you, and all of our wives do for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's yeah, and that's just a obviously Rocky is the main dude, the hero and all the but like but yeah, I think that episode in particular really shows Adrian as the yeah, as more of a hero figure.
Did you pick the speech? So this
I
was
did. Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
I picked the speech. So
What's the title of it?
I'm
I
afraid.
ain't
I'm afraid, all right?
I'm afraid, all right. Should I do it as Rocky?
You
Try to
can.
do it as Stallone.
You can
Fly?
yeah, you can have your whatever spin you want.
Hey, this is episode 47 of the Speech Guys podcast. All right. The speeches from the 80s. You know, I'm Rocky, okay? I ain't got the heart. I ain't got no heart, Adrian. It's Mike, Matt, and not Landon. And Ross. I'm gonna I want to redo that.
All right. Yeah, you could try
I
one more
wasn't
time.
happy with that take.
Yeah. Try one more time if you want.
I'm a professional. I can do this. This is episode 47 of the Speech Buys. Bleh. What's the name of the speech again? The I ain't got no heart speech.
I'm afraid, all right?
I'm afraid. All right. I'm afraid. All right. Okay. Hey, this is Sylvester Stallone. This is episode 47 of the Speech Guys podcast. What's the name of it? I ain't all right.
I'm afraid, all right?
I'm afraid. All right. I'm afraid. All right. I'm afraid.
All right?
Hey, this is episode 47 of the Speech Guys podcast with our speeches from the 80s series. I'm afraid, all right? Featuring Matt, Mike, Ross, and not Landon. Stallone out.
Cue the music.
Michael Schaefer, Ross Johnson, Matt Schultz, and Landon Fry are all here. It's free.
I'm just gonna say it. I've been thinking it for 10 minutes. I don't want a podcast scared.
Oh yeah.
Ashes. Now I've seen the road.
Pregnancy is a beautiful thing. Pregnancy is a gift.
Oh, there are stories to tell.
What kind of paint sticks to asteroids? Like, if you don't time your wall.
Afraid some days, but the road will lead us to a better place.
We are called to emerge from that default setting of self-involvement.
Okay, here we go. Rocky 3 episode, speeches from the 80s, specifically the speech that Adrian gave to him, maybe to help him get his head out of the butt. Matt is the host of this episode, so I will let him take over.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So yeah, Adrian's speech to Rocky. And so this is the scene on the beach. So Rocky is training with Apollo, and he's just not into it. Right, so just laying a little bit of context. He had just gone through a series of losses, so he got destroyed by Clubber Lang in a fight. Just prior to that fight, Clubber Lang pushed Mickey, his old, longtime trainer, and subsequently died from the injuries of that.
Can I sort of like make an observation that in Rocky 3, Rocky's trainer dies by by merely being pushed by the opponent? In Rocky 4, his trainer gets clobbered in a boxing match. And then in Rocky 5, Rocky is the trainer and he kicks the other guy.
The only redeeming quality of Rocky 5, maybe.
He kicks.
Interesting. I suppose I'd never put all that together. But yeah, there you go. So anyway, that's kind of the context for the speech. Rocky is kind of rattled by all of these losses in his life, and Adrian kind of really helps him dig deep and figure out what's really at the core of his woes and how to get him motivated to start training. Without further ado, let's listen to the speech.
Can I talk to you?
I want to ask you something important, and I want you to tell me the truth.
What?
Why'd you come here?
Just don't want it no more.
If it's over because you want it to be over, I'm glad.
I do.
It's just, you've never quit anything since I've known you.
I don't know what you want me to say. I mean, what happened? How did everything that was so good get so bad?
That's so bad. Tell me what?
I wrecked everything by not thinking for myself. I mean, why couldn't Mickey tell me where I was really at right from the start? He didn't have to carry me and lie to me and make me think I was better than I really was when I wasn't.
You never lied.
Those fights weren't right. They weren't, Adrian. I never fought anybody who was all in their prime. It was always some angle to hold on to the title longer than I should have had it. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying here?
I understand, but you've got to understand that he loved you and that was his job, protecting you.
Look, that protecting don't help nothing. It only makes things worse. You wake up after a few years thinking you're a winner, but you're not. You're really a loser. And so we wouldn't have had the title as long. So what? At least it would have been real, Adrian.
It was real.
Nothing is real if you don't believe in who you are. I don't believe in myself no more. Don't you understand? What if I don't believe? That's it. He's finished. It's over. That's it.
That's not it.
That is it.
Why don't you tell me the truth?
What are you putting me through, Adrian? You want to know the truth? The truth is I don't want to lose what I got. In the beginning, I didn't care about what happened to me. I go in the ring, I get busted up. I didn't care. But now there's you, there's the kid. I don't want to lose what I got.
What do we have that can't be replaced? What? A house. We got cars. We got money. We got everything but the truth. What's the truth, damn it?
I'm afraid, all right? You want to hear me say it? You want to break me down? All right, I'm afraid. For the first time in my life, I'm afraid.
I'm afraid, too. There's nothing wrong with being afraid.
There is. For me, there is.
Why, you're human, aren't you?
Look, I don't know what I am. All I know is I'm a liar. And because of that, Mickey ain't here no more.
You didn't push him into anything. He was a grown man and he did what he had to do. And you have no right to feel guilty for what happened. You don't. You were a champion, and you did what you were expected to do. And you did what I and everybody else thought you should do. And you want to tell me that those fights weren't real? That you were carried? Well, I don't believe it. It doesn't matter what I believe, because you're the one that's got to carry that fear around inside you. Afraid that everybody's going to take things away. Afraid you're going to be remembered as a coward. That you're not a man anymore. Well, none of it's true. It doesn't matter if I tell you. It doesn't matter because you're the one that's got to settle it. Get rid of it. Because when all the smoke is cleared and everyone's through chanting your name, it's just going to be us. And you can't live like this. We can't live like this. Because it's going to bother you for the rest of your life. Look what it's doing to you now. Apollo thinks you can do it. So do I. But you gotta want to do it for the right reasons. Not for the guilt over Mickey. Not for the people. Not for the title. Not for money or me. But for you. Just you. Just you alone.
And if I lose?
And you lose. At least you lose with no excuses. No fear. And I know you can live with that.
How'd you get so tough?
I live with a fighter.
Yeah, I was a little hesitant to do this speech. Is this first reactions?
Yep. Yeah, go for it.
Because one, as I said, the speech guy's creative executive, Gene Tinoco Schaefer, said there was too much Rocky. But also because my memories of this speech, I always felt like it didn't have a lot of internal cogency. I feel like it jumped, like the points are not really, like A does not necessarily, or B does not necessarily follow from A in various points.
Sure.
But when I spent some time re-listening to it this week, I'll admit it's a better speech than I remember. And I think that if you just sort of think a little bit harder and you think a little bit more in the effect that Adrian was trying to get at, that B really does follow from A there in this. Maybe I'll try to be a little bit less abstract. Okay, so she says, "You want to tell me that those fights weren't real, that you were carried? Well, I don't believe it." Well, Rocky had just said that, and Mickey seemed to admit that the fights were a setup, right? And then Adrian saying she doesn't believe it. But Mick told him they were set up. But I think that what she's sort of getting at is that recognizing the uncertainty of whether or not they were set up, recognizing that they, real punches were swapped. Rocky, don't stake your career on these fights being set up or not, right? Because right now, this is the only fight that really matters, right? So that's sort of what I interpreted from that after thinking about it a little bit more. I really love this imagery. When all the smoke has cleared and everyone's through chanting your name, it's just going to be us. I love that. It's just going to be us. And you can't live like this because it's going to bother you for the rest of your life. Man, just a great job of zooming out from the moment and recognizing in a sense of what really matters, their relationship and how this is going to affect the relationship. Yeah, those are the biggest things that stuck out to me.
What about you, Ross?
The first time I watched the Rocky movies through, I don't know, like high school maybe, I remember not liking Rocky 3 as well. But then I saw it again at some point, I don't remember when, since then, and I liked it a lot more. I don't know exactly why I didn't like it as much the first time. I did have to listen to it, admittedly, when, you said the Adrian Rocky speech in Rocky 3. It didn't just pop into my head.
What?
I think my first thought was just appreciating the power of just, I guess, for Adrian to just know when it's time to just completely call somebody out. Be tricky sometimes to know that, which obviously they're married in the film, which does help a little bit. But yeah, so that jumped out to me. And honestly, the line that jumped out, the same one Mike mentioned, when all the smoke is cleared and everyone's through chanting your name, it's just going to be us. That was the line that definitely jumped out to me the most.
So this, I was walking through a lobby. I was a seminarian. This was in a dorm I was staying in during this summer program thing we were doing. And this dialogue came on, and there were several parts of it.
Was it on AMC playing in the
yeah,
lobby?
Yeah, the movie was just on. Yeah, it was some movie channel. Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, whatever it was, but this lobby or this dialogue happened to be on as I was kind of walking through, and or I think I was walking in, waiting for an elevator. Just kind of passing time, and there were several things that stuck out. But just I love how she, and this is at least in the excerpt I read. Maybe it doesn't capture this as much, but earlier on in the dialogue, she just calls him out because he says all these things like, "Oh yeah, this is why I'm not motivated." And then she's like, "No, that's not it. This is why I'm not motivated." And there are all these kind of reasons, more superficial ones, and she kind of peels back the layers of Rocky's heart, which is just a cool thing to see, and something I don't think I would have appreciated as, just I was probably high school too when I first watched them, something I certainly didn't appreciate as a high schooler. And it moves quick, and I would agree. I kind of see what you're saying with it does seem a little choppy when you first kind of go through the dialogue or listen to it, or illogical or things don't follow. But yeah, if you do spend time with it, I think it all does make sense. Or Sylvester Stallone, I think, is an interesting figure. Which is part of why I picked it. I mean, well, one, 80s culturally, I don't know who captures it better than Sylvester Stallone, and maybe it looks like Mike's dubious on that.
Captures what?
Captures just the ethos of 80s cinema, just that was the era of the muscle-bound action star.
Of the man.
But yeah, I feel like Sylvester
was invented
Stallone,
in the 80s.
That's right. No men existed prior to Sylvester Stallone.
We had a man as president.
But granted, I know, Mike, you called me out that Rambo is in fact a movie where Mostly he just shoots things. But
Rocky was like his rom-com.
But
No, he
but
did
yeah,
that
so.
infamously with Dolly Parton. One you should not watch.
Wait, he did a rom-com with Dolly Parton? Are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
No, I've seen clips of it, and
That's
it
got to be
looks
terrible.
Or there's also one called what is it? Please, Mom, Don't Shoot that he did. Yeah, he had a rough patch.
Yikes. All right. Trying to recapture that Rocky magic. I don't know. Speech and dialogue is kind of her like peeling back these different fears that Rocky has. That's like really holding him back from committing to the fight with Clubber Lang. So what are you guys afraid of? Spiders? Ghosts?
I don't know if I would say it is the level of a phobia, but I'm definitely afraid of snakes. Always have been. I remember once when I was, probably between 12 and 15 years old. And I was out at a friend's house and they farmed, so we're out, kind of in the country a little bit. And my buddy, his little brother was there, and he had a friend over too. And his little brother's friend, who they're probably 8, caught a little garter snake and was just being a little punk because he knew I was afraid of snakes. So I'd be sitting in the chair by the fire, and he'd like walk up behind me and like try to put it on my shoulder and stuff. And yeah, so I don't think that caused my fear of snakes, but I'm afraid of snakes.
I was always sort of intimidated by boys who could. I mean, I never saw a girl, but I would be intimidated if I saw her. Like catching non-threatening snakes in the wild. Like, what are you, a child of Voldemort or something?
I remember like this was like 5 years. I was an adult here, by the way. I'm like 30 years old. We were at my parents' house and out in the yard, and there was a dead snake. I think my dad must have hit it with the mower or something. And I like forced myself to pick it up as like I'm gonna.
That was at your.
You were there.
Wasn't that at your brother's?
Was that then? So that was like 5 or 6 years ago.
It was, I guess, like the bachelor, so to speak, party or the priest bachelor party.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Maybe that was it.
I think that was. I remember there being an incident like that.
Well, I forced myself.
I think
to
someone
pick up
threw it in a tree, didn't they?
They might have. I just remember forcing myself to pick it up, and even that, like knowing it was dead, was terrifying.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm averagely scared of most traditional things, like ghosts, the dark. What? Like heterosexual marriage? that works on multiple levels. Yeah, I mean, like height, like with climbing.
What do you? What are you afraid of? He's a 35-year-old man.
Traditional things.
Heights,
Things,
Spiders, definitely scared of those.
Wallpaper. Victorian decoration.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, like flying, like I don't not fly, and I enjoy like the experience of flying. But yeah, there's definitely a little bit like, oh no, this plane could crash. I'm not even going to joke about the T word because especially with the recent events, it's too scary, the possibility. Yeah, lower level fears, nothing too particularly noteworthy. So like I said, heights, ghosts, and the dark, sort of just average.
So Mike's afraid of everything.
Yeah. I think just reasonably.
Very normal.
Yeah, there's a reasonable fearfulness you should have with a lot of things. Heights minimally. I mean, yeah, I would say just reasonably. I think I'm more afraid with Abe with heights. Now that I have like we went to this. Peoria has this like big overlook tower in the Heights. I don't know if you guys have been there, but it freaked me out just having Abe on there. Like that was kind of weird.
Guardrails?
There are guardrails. It's like virtually impossible for him to get out. But like I was still just kind of.
Sounds like Matt's a helicopter parent. Wrapping his kids in bubble wrap.
But yeah, I would say heights, just reasonably. So I think the thing that really, so spiders don't bother me, like just your normal spiders. I think really big insects do freak me out. Like really big spider, like tarantula types of things. I think I would have a hard time dealing with that. Like I could see myself holding a snake at a petting zoo. I could see myself doing a lot of things, but I think there's that. I remember as a kid, there were, if you guys heard like the Mary Worth stories or something, like, or there's different versions of these, like it's like the story goes like if you stand in front of a mirror in the dark.
Oh, that's Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary. Okay, I've heard different. Yeah, I've heard Bloody Mary too. But like, yeah, so like mirrors in the dark freaks me out.
Yeah.
Until I was probably like 25. Like
I still wouldn't do Bloody Mary, and that would be freaking terrible.
I mean, I wouldn't do it just because I'm like completely disinterested in doing it. But like as a younger kid, like of course there's some part of you that like wants to but doesn't want to, and anyway.
But you hear stories though. She shows up sometimes, so it's like I'm not doing it.
Yeah, no, that really freaked me out for quite a while. I mean, with this dialogue, obviously, like fears are like really negatively impacting Rocky's, maybe not decision making. Maybe that's too like cerebral of a thing, but he's just not himself. Have you guys noticed any like of just fear negatively impacting decision making or like things that?
Well, if maybe I can attempt to weave together our 3 click words tonight using the sort of layers that Adrian shaved off in the speech, and sort of to also answer your question. He's coming back from Rocky 2 where he was the underdog and he ended up winning, right? Life is great. He's married. He's wearing jackets with a tiger on the back. He has a kid now. And that's the start of Rocky 3 is the montage about how great life is. It sounds silly, but like Mick is right. He loses that eye of the tiger. He maybe didn't know he had the eye of the tiger in the first place. And that's definitely, I think, a parallel to a lot of us in life where you sort of find yourself going through the motions and wondering what happened to this certain part of your life where things felt good. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be this comprehensive feel-good way, but like this may one particular area. Yeah, like Rocky said, how did things get so bad or something like that? And while you can never quite exactly recreate what you had before, nor that you necessarily should, there is, I think, a certain kind of wisdom that Mick and Adrian are sort of like challenging him to cultivate that he didn't have before. It's the eye of the tiger in like this disciplined, sort of conscientious way, right? How am I trying to connect those are three click words, right? I think that if you're in this situation where you don't have what you had before, but you still have some of those things, especially like the material things that were referenced there, that can be a scary position. It's almost as if like I'm standing on the top of this teetering tower that I just went up, and this is not a sustainable position to stay here, but I'm still afraid of doing something active in any way, right? So that's sort of the nature of his fear, I feel like. But at the same time, there's that anxiety that anything you do is going to compromise your sense of self. I'm trying to not deal with such abstract things here, but I don't know. I'll stop there. That's sort of my attempt to sort of weave together these ideas of fear, and identity. What do you guys got on that?
I'm picking up what you're laying down, I think, but it does seem a little abstract. So maybe to concretize things a bit. So like one way, like so super lighthearted, superficial way that fears kind of negatively impact your life. There's this, so Claire and I were in Des Moines, Iowa, visiting her family. She has a cousin there. And we were just kind of getting ready to leave town, and both of us, or we had kind of decided that we were just going to leave town and, get home a little early and then, whatever, go live or do our day from there. But both of us, what we actually wanted to do was to kind of just putz around Des Moines, just hang around, go to a, local random bakery for, a breakfast pastry and just whatever, slow, easy, nice morning. But we both somehow had the sense that the other person didn't want to do it. So we were kind of afraid to like just voice our desires because we didn't think that would be reciprocated. So we end up driving out of town. And on the way out, we're both irritated at each other because of this. And, we realized that, anyway, it's just kind of I don't know, I'm sure a lot of couples have examples like that where you're trying to read into things and then no one wins, because you're living out of fear. I'm afraid Claire's not going to like this. So I'm just going to, whatever, play it safe. Maybe slightly heavier or more, potentially more substantial, like example, like, we were in this like kind of public area. There's like a park next to this like little, there's like not exactly a farmer's market, but whatever, something similar to that. This lady was had fallen. It was like an old lady had fallen, wasn't able to get up. It was clear there were a few people there. Someone was on the phone calling 911, but like, I'm a physical therapist. Like I know what I'm doing in terms of helping people and like perform, but I think there's some justification for me not doing anything because like they're already kind of getting 911 involved. Like it wasn't the first one to see it, but at the same time, the first thought I had in my head was like, crap, I don't want to be held liable for something, if something bad happened. Yeah, hurt herself trying to get up and sue me or, whatever. Like, but that was the first thought I had, which is like terrible. Like I have a skill set that can be helpful in terms of like assisting people up from that situation and helping them and assessing them and like doing some good. But like I was afraid. And yeah, I think those are maybe, I don't know if too concrete compared to Mike's abstraction, because I think there's a lot of meaning in what you were saying, but
I think I can bring it. I think I can bring it down the middle a little bit, potentially, to less abstract and less concrete at the same time. So when you put the link to, was it psychology? Psychology Today, and it kind of talked about different fears and things. And the one that I feel like resonated the most, or I think I know in myself, but also probably see in other people, is like the fear of rejection. And Rocky even talks about it in the speech. Like at the end, this is like, what if I lose? And I don't know. I just feel like there's kind of a sense that he kind of has built himself up, and like how the people see him is kind of how he sees himself a little bit, as the champion. Something that maybe she helped him see. And I think you kind of brought this up later in the outline, Matt, as far as like self-invention and stuff like that. But what is really your identity versus what you think it is, what you think it should be, what other people view it as, if that makes sense. And I think that it seems like I think some of the fear that he had, at least in some of that, was he had kind of lost he'd kind of started to confuse, his identity with this, I guess, I don't know if you'd say false or invented identity. I don't know how you'd put it. In Rocky 1, if you said, who are you? He wouldn't have said, I'm the champ, but it seems like that was his fear in Rocky 3, that I'm not the champ. Those fights weren't real. I'm not really the world champion. I held the title for too long. What if I lose? Like just all that stuff. And I think she kind of helped him see that's not actually your identity. And when you can actually see your true identity or who you really are, it's almost like the fears, not that they fall away or then that they're not real, but they just don't carry the same. I don't know if weight's the right word, but I don't know if you guys see what I'm saying at all or not with all that. But I feel like she just helped him see.
Let me try to bring something in that's going to give us an opportunity to bring Sister Miriam in. I was sort of thinking that an interesting backstory that they could have played with in Rocky films was like Rocky and his father right? Because so much, going back to our father wounds episode, becoming Jesus, right? I mean, that's and that's the title of the identity thing. Like, this is who you are, man. Yeah, why is it that the notion of identity and wounds and fathers have so much interplay as far as activity? And I feel like that could have been an interesting thing to explore, especially with Rocky in this film. Like, why do you struggle with seeing yourself the right way? The talk that I referenced there that Matt had on the outlines from Sister Miriam from a Steubenville conference, right? And she's one of her shtick, or her is talking about wounds a lot, which Matt did pose a question: is can you focus on wounds too much? I think you can, and I think that is definitely something that I thought. I might even go so far as to say that.
Sure.
That the devil might sort of take advantage of, because it can be very easy to wallow in your wounds of, which can be real things, but then
Maybe let's back up a little bit and talk about identity. Maybe identity first, because that's the thing that's there that gets rattled or wounded or somehow compromised with some sort of wound or fearful situation. So Rocky, I feel like the phrase "I'm a fighter" comes up in every Rocky movie. He just says, "I'm a fighter," whatever, Adrian, and he uses that as a justification for something at every single movie. And it's not and it's not insincere. I think there is something uniquely wired into someone who, punches people and gets punched for a living. And if you're Rocky, it's mostly getting punched. But yeah, it's not insincere, but where I guess, where does it come from? Because I feel like there's a Christian notion to oh, your identity is in Jesus, your identity is, in a beloved Son of God. And that's certainly true. And that I think it is, there is an objective element to it. It is just kind of how, yep, we are loved into existence. And God does care about each and every individual. He has a specific call for all of us to live out. But at the same time, I can certainly see how someone would be oh, well, that's manufactured. And if everyone has it, why am I, then maybe I don't have an identity if that's all my identity is, So I guess where.
Wait, if what is all your identity is the child?
If oh, I'm a beloved son of God, but everyone else is too. So who cares?
Okay,
it's not a authentic thing for me.
Yeah, I see.
So yeah, I guess where does that come from? How do you go more particular from there? Or does it come to you? Do you pick it? Do you develop it yourself? Does it happen to you? I guess what are your thoughts on that?
I see. I mean, I see where you're coming from. Where oh, that can sort of sound bland or something, right? Because especially in grade school religion, you might hear sentiment like that or emphasizing that theology. But especially the older I get, I see the relevance of that belief. But I see it very much as a foundational belief, right? That can inform the idea that you're a fighter if you're a Rocky, right? That, well, first I'm a child of God, and then that informs, how he's a fighter, right? Versus if there's no foundation to that, then what's the moral parameters of your fighting, right? Because Clubber Lang, I mean, I don't know if Clubber Lang saw himself as a child of God, right? We saw how that turned out.
I think it's fair to kind of, recognize that objective statement and truth that, I'm a beloved son of God. And then that's the foundation that everything else is built upon. And it seems like you have to have some sort of objective foundation like that, or you're just eventually gonna crumble. So
because what do you do when you're no longer a fighter, right? make Creed
exactly.
4.
Like what's Rocky in it? I mean Rocky Balboa, he still did it, but
Keep making
right?
Rocky movies, baby.
But yeah, it's
Rocky
just like
12.
if you 100% just self-invent your identity, you're either always changing or it's gonna fail eventually. And neither of those seem to be like lasting. I feel like that foundation is super important to be able to maintain some sense of peace or joy, throughout your life. And then I think it's finding the other things based on, like Matt, you had said, is it, I don't remember your exact question, but it seemed like you're kind of off the, do you pick your identity? Is it given to you? Is it developed over time? I feel like it's like built on the foundation, and then it's probably all of the above, like some of it is personality, which is just, maybe somewhat genetic or, but then other things are chosen, if that makes sense. The type of person you choose to be is going to be, that's how you view yourself. And when they stop chanting your name, it's just you and me.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting...
Living in a nursing home.
Me and Ross. They've been living in a nursing home, ranting about the glory days of the speech guys.
And Mike's still somehow running 6 miles a day.
He comes and visits us and brings us donuts.
Here, fatties.
I've got diabetes. Ross has heart disease, and neither of us are
And I have
on our feet anymore.
I have 7 wives.
But so there was that TED talk I posted. He kind of told a little bit of his story of kind of his, I guess, development of his identity. So he's he's British, always firmly appreciated and identified with his British heritage. But one of the things that he mentioned kind of happened as a young kid. So his brother died. Marcus, the speaker, was 6 years old. I don't know how old his brother was. I can't remember. But that was something that he chose to view his brother's loss as like a journey of self-realization, and he kind of would like think about his brother at different periods of his life. What if he was here, and kind of chose to like have that be this sort of wind in his sails, which is really cool, like a really cool way to frame that. But he really emphasized the choice element, which seemed a little bit like self-inventy and didn't sit well. But even he had to admit at the end, so he kind of did this photography project in Brazil, kind of and just about how these people kind of identified, because there's all these, I don't know that much about the history of Brazil, but I know there's a lot of different cultures. They're like, indigenous folks. There are Portuguese people who colonized it. There's a lot of Spanish influence. There's some like African diaspora that happened there or something. I don't know the details, but anyway, it's very diverse, like complex area, exploring how these people identified themselves. And he did emphasize the choice, but at the very end, he admitted, he was like, there are certain facts that are kind of like the substrate. And these people kind of like latched onto certain facts and like wove them into their identity. Like the facts are like the thread, and then an individual kind of, makes into a tapestry, so to speak. Which I think is a mature way of thinking. I think he probably overemphasizes choice. Like Rocky has the ability to fight and get punched a million times and not pass out. And he has a certain intensity into his personality that allows him to do that. And I think that's kind of like maybe that's like the there's more particulars. There's objective facts that you're given, but you do have to choose, kind of pick and choose and like develop it as well. Productive and something that like God does intend. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like God, I'm imagining, I know Rocky does get a blessing from that priest, and I forget if it was Rocky 1 or 2. He's like, can I get a blessing to something? That's one of my favorite lines, but yeah, like there's certain particulars that you weave into something that God wants you to be. But maybe the unique part about Rocky 3 is his identity's rattled for the first time. You know, like he never expected to win in the first fight. He's somehow managed to win in the second fight, and then Rocky 3 happens. You know, he's on a hot streak. He's winning these fights, whether they're, you know, however legitimate they are or not. Yeah, like then he gets it rattled by Clubber Lang. Like, how have you guys had that happen to you? Like, how have you responded? What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like, and I don't know if I'd say rattled, but maybe just, I don't know, maybe like a realization. I don't say this in a bad way. I think everybody would come to the same conclusion eventually. Like, just coming to the conclusion as I get a little bit older and maybe grow in maturity a little bit, that I'm just an average person. And the reason I think it was more of a, and it wasn't like I wouldn't have ever known that at like a logical, like in a logical way, right? Like, yeah, you're probably average at most things. That's how it works, you know?
Sure.
But I don't know. I just think that I had a little bit of a kind of, maybe in a similar way as Rocky here. Obviously, I was never the world champion at anything, but in things that weren't necessarily the core of my identity, but things that maybe I associated with, you know, that I had chosen to be a part of. I always just kind of felt like I was good at stuff. So like I was good at sports in high school. I did well in school. So I feel like I almost just always viewed myself as like, I'm good at X, or I'm good at this, or I'm good at that. And then just as I got older, just maybe just starting to see just more and more things. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty average at this and I'm pretty average at that. And just like, I don't know if I'm explaining that very well. So I feel like I kind of view it more as an immaturity to maturity type journey. Just, I think my pride settled a little bit and I was not humbled in like a I suck way, but more just, so I didn't have the Adrian kind of pulling me out on the beach, but just kind of slowly over years kind of just figuring out. And I think it just made me, I think that in some ways that made me kind of think more about the foundational things, right? So, I'm not maybe as good at this as I thought I was, or better at people than this, or like those type of things. So I think that over time so I don't think rattled is the right word, but I think I just changed how I viewed myself a little bit.
I think that the most relevant response I have to that, I think, and this is something Sister Miriam brought up, with that idea of being seen, right? Feeling like we're not being seen is kind of the nature of a particular wound. And that's definitely something that when you're young, you really don't like. I remember having that feeling when I was young, of not being seen by people in my life, but I wouldn't have used those words because, you never heard those words. So I was like, well, yeah. I wonder if, as a result, I can lean very heavily into various pursuits, as, whether it's running or climbing or writing or podcasting, that, okay, so I don't necessarily feel seen, or like these little nuances of my heart recognized in the way that I want them to be seen in these other circumstances of my life. So therefore, I'm going to make myself seen in these other ways.
For sure.
Does that make sense? And whether that's the healthiest reason. I think one thing I've sort of always struggled with that idea is because it's like, how much voice do you give to that? Like, I don't want to sound like a whiny little, hey. Yeah. And that's something I really tried to give a lot of voice to, and even find a certain amount of like resolution for the character of Mel in Under the Ozark Stars, because the character of Mel, there's these aspects of her interior life with respect to running, and not just running, but running hard. And recognizing that there's something to this religion thing. It's not just old guys in robes, but it's actually a way of seeing the world that is noble and beautiful and ancient. And as I've shared before in some ways or another, like those are things I recognize in myself, and because they felt invisible in many ways to, and maybe that's just my own perception, maybe I was misinterpreting things, but they felt invisible, especially younger, that I was foolish for feeling that way about those things, and therefore they were not worthwhile. And it can just make life, I think, more confusing than it needs to be, right? At that really important time when you are trying to figure out who you are, right? It's like, oh gosh, there's this stuff going on in my heart that feels like it means something to me, but maybe it actually doesn't mean anything, right? And if a child can work through that in a more effective and constructive way, then they will be able to have an identity that's a little bit more durable, that's not so tenuous like Rocky's was.
Like the fears and identity and stuff. I think, and we talked about it a little bit in the outline, but what do you guys think of the idea? And I have an example for it, but kind of the idea that if we're afraid of something, maybe that means we should do that thing. And the reason I bring it up was I feel like, Rocky seemed in a way afraid to fight because his identity had been rattled. And I feel like I'm trying to remember back something that I remember when we were in college, something that I feel like inspired me. I think it struck a chord in a way was when we were, I don't know where I was or where I heard it, but the idea that you should ask a girl on a date and not just hang out with her because that puts you in a possible place of rejection and she's worth that. So most of the time when guys, quote unquote, just hang out with a girl, text, call, go to and it just kind of slowly, just everybody knows they're dating over this period of time. The reason that went that way was very likely just the guy was afraid of rejection. So that really struck a chord with me. So I remember when I asked Julie on a date, we hadn't really hung out very much, didn't know her very well, but I was very I want to say I'm going to ask her on a date and make it very clear and give myself the possibility of rejection and all that. The funny side of it was I remember when I asked her on a date, my exact words were, "Do you want to go out to dinner?" or something like that. And she just was immediately like, "Oh yeah, that sounds great." And I remember I had this moment of, does she know what I just meant? Because I didn't say the word. Because I'd built up so much in my head, like I'm going to specifically tell her this is a date. So I do remember there was like a 5-second pause, and then I went, "It's on a date." And then her only response was like, I think she actually said, "Yeah, I got that." It was pretty, yeah. So I kind of looked silly, but
I mean, that could come off cute.
Yeah, so I could. Yeah, that's endearing.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Look at this guy; he's a doofus. He's not smooth at all.
I'll give him a chance.
My heart rate's through the roof. But anyway, so just this idea of just kind of doing something that you're afraid of, and it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't seem like I can't think of an example of something right now. Like, oh, I'm afraid to do that thing, so I should do it. But I just remember that striking me, at least at that time of my life.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Whatever's scary, you should do, but also temper it as well. I think the climbing gym is a good example. Like me and my climbing partners, as oftentimes we'll push each other on, like whichever one's scarier, that's the one you should do. But you don't want to do that all the time either, or else you're going to get burned out, which I think applies to life as well.
I mean, one example with my identity being rattled, I would say relatively young, and kind of also like you said, just exposing yourself to it. I know you mentioned, Ross, just being average. I am an average athlete, maybe a little above average.
I'll give you 60 percentile.
60 percentile. I think that seems reasonable. But
above average rock climbing, though. I was impressed that day.
Yeah, see, there you go. And I am the strongest speech guy. In case for people keeping track at home, Mike's the fastest for long distances. Ross is definitely the fastest for short distances. Landon's the best golfer by a long shot, but I am the strongest. So there you go.
Everybody is special.
It's my identity, Mike. All right, don't rattle it. But so like high school, I mean, I went to a huge high school. So graduating class, 1,100 kids, and they were like 100. There were over 100 kids who went out for the football team, so they actually had to do cuts. Normally, football like is not a cut sport, and I was on the team, but I was like barely. I would be on the field for like maybe a special team or two during the game, and that was about it. Very much on the fringe of anything, and I think, your freshman and sophomore year, there's always that hope you're going to hit a growth spurt and become a monster. Junior year, you're like, oh, crap, maybe this isn't going to happen. And then your senior year, it's like, done this much. Like, I might as well stay on the team. There's certain elements of that weren't noble, but there's enough that kept me in it, that I didn't quit. And I did continue to play football, even though there was even though I was very much on the fringe. And that was like really, really painful as a kid. And I don't know if I would have admitted that at the time, but like looking back, I think there were a lot of, obviously it's not like the coaches did anything wrong. Like, yeah, there were better players than me, but it still felt like a wound that, coaches didn't do anything wrong. They picked better players to play. But I still felt rejected in that way, and it was, there was some pain there. But yeah, like I think there are enough things, whether there were noble reasons or not, just like, well, shoot, I've put this much into it, might as well stay on. And, or just being able to wear a jersey on Fridays at school was still like a rewarding thing. There's certain I like spending time with the guys, and like the camaraderie of a football team is motivating as well. But yeah, like it was the types of things that I'm like very, very glad I stuck with it. And I think that did kind of, it made it less, like you mentioned, like that teetering thing, that teetering ladder that you're like unsteady on, just kind of staying with it and like risking like, yep, I might not actually play much at all, I think was kind of helpful for like solidifying an identity in that. Like there are other identities you kind of gain from things like that, in terms of like, working hard, being a good teammate. And I think also around that time, like there's a youth group that I was kind of able to be like, all right, like that did show me my true identity. Even though I'm not sure how I would have phrased it at the time.
I think identity is so important, and I'm also, you guys can start like brainstorming on John Eldridge's Wild at Heart book too, if anything comes to mind. But there's so many moments, when I'm sitting there on the couch drinking my coffee, it's dark outside, it's maybe cold and windy, and not trying to toot my horn, but like acknowledge reality, right? There's not a lot of people who would go out and run and do that. Not zero people, but not most people, right? And or just or a lot of hard circumstances where you think of the fact, and it's not just one thing, but it's like, because I'm a runner, I'm going to go out and do that. Because I'm a Schaefer, I'm going to go out and do that hard thing. Because I'm a Tinoco, I'm going to go out and do that hard thing. Because I'm a Christian, I'm going to go and do this uncomfortable thing, right? The point is that I think that when you have those very clear notions of identity, right? We obviously all have lots of different identities that are relevant to each of us, right? When you have that really rich, deep foundation, positive foundation, all those different ways of seeing yourself, you have so many different perspectives, resolutions, ways of seeing a challenge in a way that's going to help you move forward in it, right? And if you right? As far as like Schaefer, Tinoco goes, my two family names, right? There's a sense of value there because like I know our family stories reasonably well, right? Because my mom did a big genealogy project growing up and I drove around different cemeteries with her, and we had family reunions and there are all these family stories, right? And the family stories weren't about, hey, remember how Grandpa Jeb used to watch a lot of TV? No, it's because he was fighting the what was the word for Japan and Germany and Spain? The Axis? Axis?
Yeah, Axis and allies.
Yeah.
It was
yeah,
Italy.
yeah. Right?
That's
And Italy. That's Spain. Right. And I guess the point I'm saying, and then obviously, with the Christian story, actually knowing your Christian story in a very significant way. One question I enjoyed posing to my students when I was teaching is I want you guys to think of the first person in your family who became Christian, right? Maybe that was 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, because there was something that had to have taken place courageous for that person, right? Maybe they were an actual martyr. Who knows? Probably not. But at the very least, they had to endure some sort of awkwardness or embarrassment. And if you don't honor that choice by either being legit Catholic or not committing to this all, one of those two things, you're dishonoring that family legacy. Sure. Not saying religion is family, but there is a certain agency there to think about. So anyway, the point of it being is that identity is just, it gives you so much capacity to deal with hard things, and you got to know the stories for each of those identities.
I think that's a good way to wrap up the identity stuff. This will be cut or whatever, but
who am I?
Unless, yeah, like if so, yeah, if one of you guys have
more identity. What else we got?
Other stuff, but yeah, I thought that was really good. I like that.
Yeah.
How many times do you think we said the word identity in that?
So another cool dynamic of this speech is that Adrian, so she knows something isn't quite right with Rocky's answers, right? And this is, so he kind of initially says, makes some comment about like, oh, those fights weren't right, I never fought anyone who was in their prime, whatever. And then, she is like, oh, no, that's not it. And then it's like, oh, well, I don't want to lose stuff. I don't want to lose our house or our money. I don't want to, like I'm providing for you and the kids and, whatever. I don't want to lose it. And then she kind of peels back like, hey, all of that can be replaced. We've got more than we need. Like, what's that's bull crap, And then that's when she gets to like, I'm afraid, right? And that's the core wound, so to speak. That's the core problem that Rocky needs to deal with, right? So I think it's beautiful the way she does that. And I think there's something uniquely feminine in the way she does that. And something that I think certainly as like, just being married for 2.5, almost 3 years now, you just have more experiences of that sort of thing. Just like the women in your life kind of having this unique ability to like know you and force you to dig deeper. Just a really cool dynamic to the speech. So like, I guess how have the women in your life forced you to dig deeper? I think that is kind of a uniquely feminine skill. I might actually throw out something out. So I threw that Sister Miriam talk on there. So she's really legit, and she as well as Bob Shukes, who I mentioned in the outline. I know we haven't talked about him much here, but so they did a retreat for Joliet seminarians. This was shortly after the summer where I had the Rocky III lobby encounter. So there were like certain times you could sign up to like just have like a 15-minute one-on-one conversation. And I did get to chat with Sister Miriam for like a little stretch. And yeah, I won't share the details of that conversation. I would say that was certainly one of the times where like she peeled back several layers, and I think that, like she does have a very special gift with that. I think, I'll leave it at that. If I think of a tactful and succinct way to express it, maybe I will, but we'll kind of leave it there for now.
And I don't think I disagree with what you're saying. But just to make us dig a little deeper, how are women, like you said, that's like a uniquely feminine thing. Like in what way or how so?
More on like an emotional level and like an awareness level. Because like Rocky is, I'm sure, like he's been challenged in different points in his life by Mickey, by Apollo, by all these different people, these men in his life, and there's a certain way men challenge each other, and then I feel like there's just like a different dynamic to how women do it, and I would say especially on just the emotional level, I think is kind of the main thing, where there are these deep-seated emotions that Rocky is not aware of, or maybe afraid to like interact with. And that's where women maybe have like a little bit more courage and a little more awareness to like to navigate that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Something that this was on my mind recently, because having four goddaughters, I do think a lot about the formation of their souls and how they see themselves and carry themselves. And I don't know, for some reason thinking about that reminded me of a kind of story that I used to remember hearing a lot in college, of some guy focused missionary or a priest who started going to daily mass because of a girl that they thought was attractive they saw there. So that's just sort of affirming the reality of what Matt was suggesting, that women have this capacity to inspire men, or in certain ways. And I can certainly identify that, like in my life. And again, and not trying not to podcast scared as well, but like, I mean, there's a certain, in those instances where a girl breaks off the relationship, I mean, a lot of the times, since they're obviously the ones who broke it off, is like, it's still like on my mind, like, oh man, sure wish that would work out. And of like trying to rectify that by being as, well, man, maybe I need to be more virtuous and less obnoxious and stronger and more well-read and more interesting and all these different things. And I mean, I guess if well, yeah. And I don't know how,
Sure.
I don't know what's you guys' experience back in the days when you were dating. Like, how normal of an attitude was that for you guys, of like, I gotta get better?
Yeah, and that's maybe I think that's an interesting comment, because I would say that the idea that I have to get better is kind of like you're kind of saying I am a project. And like fundamentally that's not who you are. You know what I mean? Like, not that you shouldn't like try to grow in different ways, but like God loves you right now, no matter what, no matter how scummy you are, right? And that's like the fundamental thing. That's the fundamental identity that we referred to earlier. That's like, all right, once that's set, now you can like kind of pay attention to different facts and like kind of weave something. That's the loom, if we're going to use the tapestry example.
Yeah.
And I would say it's that idea that like you are not a project. was like a really important grace that I got that summer that I referred to, like where the lobby and this, and basically kind of seeing God as someone who is interested in me now, like here and now. Like I haven't grown. I'm not growing right now. I'm just there. Like, and I totally have felt that my whole life, in terms of every failure or rejection. The idea that, oh, it's got to get better. All right. And there's something noble in that attitude. That I think is a good thing. There are some good that comes from that. And there's a reason that's kind of a protective mechanism. But I think sometimes it is just that.
Yeah, that is the foundation of tape, all that stuff. Like that's the primary thing, that you are enough. And then we also know, like, there's areas I would like to grow in and get better at. And just thinking about the masculine versus the feminine a little bit, I feel like, at least in my experience, men are maybe better at calling out men for this is where you need to grow at. So, like, I've had different guys challenge me hard, but like, yeah, you need to, let's do this, or let's get better here, or let's get in better shape. Let's not look at our cell phones as much, like, the do. But I feel like maybe women are better at helping people recognize the more foundational truth that you are enough. And what comes to my mind the most when I think of that, honestly, is my mom, and like relationship with a mother. And I feel like that's probably, I think for most people, it's like, who would love you, if they saw all your dirty secrets, knew all your screw ups, like everything. Like, I feel like most people, like, your mom would still love you. You know what I mean? If that makes sense or not. And maybe that's part of the feminine genius of being able to see people's that foundational truth that they are enough. They are good, no matter what else has happened.
Yeah.
You guys know the Whatever podcast? Have you heard about that?
I've never watched it. I've heard of it though.
It's like a group of, it's probably in reality like the most typical. I would be really, really curious what like the true average male in that dating age bracket would have to say in response to this question. Like, how do women inspire you? How do you change your behavior in a healthy way, not the projecting way like Mike, in order to level up, right? Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea what how they'd respond to that. I mean, it feels like they would just sort of drool emotionless, like their brains don't operate at that level.
But yeah, no, I think I think it's just really, just hearing you guys talk about this, and I just makes me really grateful, just like to have a good wife and good mom, and just a really good thing. I know there are times where I get rather cynical about the physical therapy profession, which you guys are aware of, and but yeah, no, Claire's got a good way of shutting me down but building me up at the same time. You know what I mean? Kind of being like, that's a bunch of crap, because there are these people that you've mentioned that I've heard you talk about that really needed you, so you don't have the right to be a cynical turd,
Yeah, that's an interesting skill, but I can see a lot of value in, because there is oftentimes, you don't want a partner who's just constantly building you up, because that's utterly, like, dude, or lady, relax, like that's utterly naive or whatever. But you don't want to be shut down constantly either. It's like, that's great. Great job, Claire. Julie's always riding Ross, like, Ross, pick up your underwear. Ross, why are you drinking another beer? She's not, just to qualify that.
Would this be a good time for the final bell? And if we did a final bell, would it be like, if women basically, if women spur us to greater emotional depth, in what way should we
What's
inspire
the
women?
perfect woman? Final bell?
Ding, 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 ding.
All your strength, all your power, all your love.
15. One more round. There's no stopping us now. This is our round. Don't stop it now. To start, we don't stop. All your strength, all your power, all your love, everything you've got. This is your whole life here. Do it now.
And we're back. Final bell. And boy, it's fun having the audio from the final bell being from Rocky himself.
That's true.
From the following movie, though, Rocky 4. Matt, what do we got? What's going to bring us home?
All right. So we just talked about how women have a unique ability to inspire men in to greater emotional depth, awareness, and thus inspiration. So if women spur their men to greater emotional depth in kind of a uniquely feminine way, in what ways do or should men inspire women in kind of a uniquely masculine way?
So what sticks out to me is actually different from what initially stuck out to me. And this actually pairs well with something I learned in college from some good male mentors, is that, and this sort of goes with what Matt was saying with Claire before, is I think not all women, but it seems with guys, as case in point, like it does work really well, like giving them crap, but also building them up. But I think that it does need to be much more of the build up positive sort of side of that equation with girls or that person that you're dating. Yeah, like good example, with girls I've gone rock wall climbing with, like being very positive, encouraging, at a 9-to-1 scale versus a 1-to-1 scale is, I think, important. Because being obnoxious, I think, is really easy for a lot of modern males, thinking that's attractive in some goofy way.
Yeah, just treating a woman like a woman. So like I'm not like, but I feel like there is, and not like all jokes aside, like I think there's something good about the ability for men to build up other men by challenging them to grow and get better. And I think not that you can never do that, for women, but I feel like it does seem like there is something different in the sense of that I feel like oftentimes maybe women are good at seeing the good in others and seeing that foundational truth about the identity of other people. Yet I feel like maybe they question it in themselves a little bit. And maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's somewhat cultural and maybe that's, we go know all the factors why, but I feel like just showing them or letting them know if that like that they are good and they are enough. And I think that probably looks a little bit different for, depending on what relationship, if it's your wife or your daughter or your mom or just some girl that you know. But
really briefly, as a supplement to my answer, recently I took my niece Sam out for coffee and lunch, and like I held the door open for her, and I was, because she's 12 now, so I'm explaining like, if a guy doesn't do this on the date, make sure you send him my way, right? And she says something like, well, I can hold the door myself. Well, that's good. You should be able to open the door yourself. And now, but the man doesn't, right, to celebrate you, to honor you, right? Now, if they do it every single time, then clearly they just think you can't open the door and, they should be addressed, right? But anyway, I think something, subtle like that of just helping, recognize that their femininity is something to be honored and celebrated is worthwhile. But
one way I've heard of like a wide variety of women, so like family members, people who are faithful and unfaithful, people who I know a little bit or know a lot. I think there's a pretty wide demographic about of people who've kind of mentioned this same thing. When they talk positively of their husbands, they describe them as like their rock. I feel like that's like the image I've heard people share the most, maybe. And yeah, I was talking with Claire about this like exact question, like what do men bring to the relationship? And like she did mention several things like objectivity, like there's a certain security and stability that she really appreciates, and that was kind of her response. So like objectivity, emotional security, stability. And yeah, like after she said that, I was just thinking about more about how just like hearing my aunts talk about different things, or hearing like, like women of varying ages, you just a wide demographic, and like oh, he's my rock is kind of like the phrase I've heard a lot. So anyway, I guess that's probably like, that might be like the best, like the singular image, like to be the rock. But I guess maybe more specifically what that might look like is, objectivity. Like you're a stable person and you're not going anywhere. And actually a cool thing, a really cool dialogue. I think it's whatever Rocky movie they get married in. I think it's the second one where they actually get married. But Adrian asks Rocky, like, or she expresses the fear that he's going to get bored with her. And he tells her he's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And just like, man, that's, I remember, so I showed Claire all the Rocky movies when we were still dating.
You ain't ever getting rid of me.
Okay, that was it. Yeah. You ain't ever getting rid of me.
You ain't never getting rid of me.
But yeah, no, I remember, especially because I was dating Claire at the time. I was showing her all the Rocky movies because she had never seen them. But yeah, like just thinking about that phrase, and it just meant a lot at the time because I was getting closer. I can't remember how close I was to proposing, but I know I was kind of thinking things about that.
I was wondering if you weren't doing nothing for the next 30 or 40 years. That was more like Schwarzenegger. I'm pretty impressed with your Stallone impression, Matt. That was pretty good.
Hey, it's not a big deal enough.
Although it's sort of a mix of Brooklyn.
Yeah, a little bit. Who cares? Who cares? All right. All right. What do we got next week? It's Landon, so I suppose it's a mystery, right?
It's a mystery. It's January 1st, 1980 speech. Cool. Well, it's been great. Well, thanks for drinking.
And thinking.
Stay safe out there.
Hey, let's cue the music.
Come and go. Look toward the horizon. Up ahead you'll find a peace of mind, relief from the trying. I have burned a bridge, wrecked in a ditch, had to ask forgiveness. Dead ends come and go. Look toward the horizon. Oh, there are stories to tell. The times we grew and the times we fell. Oh, I've been afraid some days, but the road will lead us to a better place. The road will lead us to a better place.
He's the creator.
Why did we have Mike Schaefer as the
Do you know
ultimate
You've met Mike Schaefer? Yeah, you met Mike.
I know.
I don't know.
We give
So
him a fit.
I mean, he's the one who's definitely put the most effort and creative input in the podcast, and he is very kindly volunteered to be the main editor, in part because the rest of us have kids, and yeah, it would just be harder to set aside, big chunks of time to do that. And so, yeah, he's very generous on that front.
How long does it take to edit? Like, what are you guys saying that you need to edit out of these?
I don't. I mean,
There
I
goes
don't
Matt
know.
on another racist tirade at minute 50.
I don't know exactly how long. It's been a while since I've edited them, and yeah. To be honest, I don't know exactly how long, but the biggest thing is just kind of like the learning curve of learning how to edit well, and to like, because the last time I edited, we were just using Skype audio, which is a lot easier because we're all on the same like audio stream. So it's literally you just kind of like use some sound reduction stuff and then cut out awkward pauses, and that's it. But now that Mike, because we're recording separately now, and Mike has to like sync them and whatever, so he does a lot more complicated things that I don't really know how to do anymore.